Hey, Mega Moms, Jessica Hensley here with Real Estate Mega Moms, where we help moms create a life and a business that they love. And today I have my partner with me, Stefanie Stockburger, here at Mega Moms. And we're going to be talking about taking the high road, both personally and professionally. When should you take the high road? Hint maybe always, but we're going to talk about some exceptions, and it's going to be an interesting and different conversation, but I'm excited to dive into this topic with each of you and hopefully give you some things to think about. Okay, Steph. So what do you think of whenever you think of taking the high road? What comes to mind?
Not always taking the easy path, maybe the angry path or the quick path. So Jess, I know you know me well enough to know that I listen, I take it all in, I have to think about it before I respond. This is not came from just something that I learned instantly. If you knew me years ago, this hothead would instantly react and you would instantly hear my opinion. And it was not always right. And it was years and years of probably acting the wrong way, acting with a hothead and not acting with with thoughts and good intentions. It took years of developing this and a lot of prayers and a lot of wrong mistakes that got me here. So now I know to take the right path, to take the right road, that I have to listen to my heart. I have to take everything into consideration, not just my own thoughts, not just my own feelings, not just my first reaction, but now I'm taking so much more into consideration. I'm taking your story. I'm taking the stories around it. I'm taking God's intention for what's going on, so much. And then I'm sitting with it, and then I'm reacting. So that's what the high road is to me, is all of those things.
Being slow to react.
What is it?
Well, that's so good, really. I mean, I think the high road is doing the right thing, for sure. And the reason this came about as a topic is when we're thinking about being real estate agents and business owners and wives and moms and friends, we encounter situations both personally and professionally that people do us dirty. If you're living and breathing, you're going to encounter somebody that maybe doesn't have good intentions, or they have their own stuff that they're dealing with, and they're showing up in a way that they think is the best they can do with the information they have at the time. But unfortunately, it's hurtful to you. And so I think it's so tempting to post something on social media about, it could be about your spouse or your friend or client that's giving you a hard time, or just a number of things. Another agent be like, oh, I can't believe that they did this, and you're being a keyboard warrior and trying to, I guess, tell your side of the story, which we're going to talk about that a little bit. Like, when is it okay to share your side and when is it not okay to share your side? But I wanted to talk about this because our business relies on our reputation, and it is so important for us to be able to maintain a good reputation and to get the business, to get referrals and to get people to want to even work with us. And so, if for no other reason than that, taking the high road should be something that we want to do so that we can stay in business. Because I don't know about you, Steph, but if I see somebody complaining all the time, leaving bad reviews, talking about suing people, like all kinds of stuff like that, red flags go up for me, and I'm like, I don't think I want to do business with you. I don't really want to go down a professional road with you, right? So I think it's important for us to do it. So some people may not know. Maybe they weren't raised in a way that they know what the high road is, or they're maybe a little bit more impulsive. So you've taught me a lot, Stefanie, about how to respond to people, how to treat people with grace. And I was raised great. So, I mean, not saying anything of anyone's raising, but, we do the best with the information we have at the time. We respond to things the best we can. And so we want to give you a little bit more context and a few things to think about from a real estate mom's perspective when you deal with a terrible client, a terrible agent, or you have a family problem, drama, what do you do? So let's start with this. We talked about taking the high road, and we talked about why it's important to maintain that integrity and self-respect. And I think not only for ourselves, but for our business, that's a big reason, but also for ourselves. We feel better about ourselves when we do the right thing. And I think it's written on our hearts of what the right thing is to do. Your conscience tells you when you're acting outside of integrity, right, Steph?
Absolutely. And here's the thing is we are also human beings. And I think that we have to remember that we are, even though we act with the best intentions, that there are also times where we can be walking on the high road, and we have to remember that there's people on the side of us looking at us and always like judging what we're doing. And those are those people that are always looking for maybe the worst in us, or there's people that are looking for the best in us, because just like you, I'm always looking for the best for you. So what you're doing in your day, like here's me like, Jess, yes, Jess, go girl. But then there's also you're doing your daily, but there could be a person looking for the worst in you, like picking the very same actions out of you and saying, look what she did this, she did that. So someone might think you're walking not in the highest path. Do you know what I'm saying? What you're doing. So that makes it so difficult. So and those people bring in their own baggage. They have their own stories, their own agendas. And so it's so hard to please so many people. And it is so difficult. We're all walking in our own paths. And what you're doing to me is absolutely, you're walking in the highest path. And again, we're all humans. We make absolute mistakes. But everyone is walking and judging, and they have their own agendas. They have their own stuff that they're dealing with. And it is so easy to offend people because there's just so many things. And I think that we need to remember, and again, this is another thing you probably know for me is, I am so aware, and sometimes too aware, that when I'm looking around, it's like, God, I hope I didn't say something that hurts that person, or I hope I didn't do something that hurts that person, because I'm so aware of those things, because those things matter to me. But you can't just live like that forever. And I know we'll get into this later, that sometimes you have to just stand up and say that this is what I'm doing. This is what I'm doing. And you can't always worry about the other person either. It's like I'm walking in my path, and I'm walking in what I think is the higher good of my path. I don't know, a little bit of a tangent there, but I think it's important to know that even though we think we're doing things right, sometimes what this person thinks is right, this person over here probably thinks you're not doing right, if that makes sense.
Yeah, think about it from the real estate transaction perspective, right? So we are hired to work for a client. So you have a buyer's representative and you have a seller's representative, and then you have the buyer and the seller. And as a agent working for my client, it's my job to get them to look out for their best interest, to, advocate for them, to help them get the best price, and we're kind of working against the other agent, even though our ultimate goal, both of us, is to get the transaction to closing, but we're on opposite sides. And so I have had, whenever I've been representing my clients and, looking out for their best interest, I've had the other agent get very upset with me for, like, you name it. One being, I don't negotiate with verbal offers, because it's a risk to my clients. Especially when I'm on the seller side, I require a written offer, a written pre-approval. I call this the lender. I'm doing due diligence, and I have had buyer's agents get mad at me. Well, you don't need to be calling the lender. That's not your job. They're not supposed to talk to you. Or, well, I don't understand why you can't just take this verbal offer, and just being frustrated. And so kind of brings me to an analogy I heard of, here's something going on. Let's say it's an object on a stage, or a stage. We'll just use that like you're watching a play. And I'm sitting on this side of the stage, and you're sitting on the complete opposite side of the stage. We're watching the same act, but we're seeing something totally different, because it's based on where we're at in relation to that, our perspective. And so I think it's just really important to remember that, we all have, and giving each other grace, giving each other the benefit of the doubt. I've said a couple times now, they're showing up with the information, doing the best they can with the information they have at the time. And allowing people that grace that have offended you, and giving yourself that grace. Because I've been doing a lot of work on family, and just trying to show up as the best version of myself in my marriage and for my son as a mom. And I'm like, oh my goodness, I wish I would have seen this 20 years ago. Like, oh wow, this one little thing that I've learned might have changed our life and made things so much more pleasant, or whatever. Not that we've been unpleasant, but you know what I mean. And it's easy to beat yourself up too. And I have had to remind myself, well, I did the best I could with the information I had at the time. And my husband did the best he could, and my son, and you, Stefanie. So I think that's important to remember, to give each other grace. The other thing I wanted to share, something that you say often, and I think this is such a sign of maturity. You come to conversations and relationships with looking for what's important to you. Like the other person, right? You're in this conversation and you're asking, what does Jessica care about? What is she after here? What is, not in a devious way, but just like, how can I give her what she's looking for? And that is so powerful. Stefanie, you shared that with me a few years ago when there was some conflict with some staff. Well, anyway, we won't go into details there, but I will say it was such a huge help. It was such a huge help. Instead of coming to a conversation or disagreement with, how can I protect myself? How can I make sure I'm seen and heard, which is our basic human. Instead of that, and not that that's wrong, but what if we show up in the conversation as, how can I validate the other person? How can I show them that they're significant? That changes everything. So, Steph, do you want to share like how you even came about that knowledge? It was so impactful to me.
The first time I realized this was probably like early on in Brad and my marriage. And I realized it like in conversations that we would have, that if I could, instead of like whenever we would have conversations that I know that were intense, if I could remember to just turn the things around and listen to what he's saying and to give him validation for those things. Because I think in every relationship, there's something that someone wants out of it. We're people. Someone wants something, right? It's to be heard. It's to be validated and listened to, right? And I think everyone wants something a different way. I learned really early what Brad wanted. And I learned what made him feel good. And I loved him. And I knew that giving him that made him feel loved. And because he felt loved, he gave me what I wanted, and that was to feel loved too. And so it absolutely worked. I'm just like, I knew exactly what it took for him to feel loved, and it made him happy. And I'm like, oh my gosh, it made him happy. So then guess what? Because he was happy, that's all I wanted. I wanted him to be happy, and that made me so happy. So, and I don't know if it was just like it's nothing like a formula or anything. It's just like, oh my gosh, this guy, all he wants to do is feel loved. And then, so then the other conversations that I would have is I realized easy that, especially, I'm going to flip it to real estate. There are conversations with certain realtors. Some realtors want to feel like they are everything. They are everything. And you know what? I don't care if they want to feel like they're everything, or even if they are everything. I will make them feel like everything. They are everything. Because if they feel like everything, it goes my way. They are everything. And you know what? I'm happy that they feel like they're everything, because that fills their heart. And all they want to do is feel validated. And I'm making them feel validated. You are everything. And I know things that they've done, and I've told them, you've done this, and guess what? I have really good relationships with these realtors because they remember I pick up the phone. I have good conversations with them. They can count on me. I will work the deals. They never have to fight with me. I don't have an ego. I don't fight with them. I never make them feel like I'm better than them, because I'm not. I'm a person that wants to get a deal done. I want my clients to get in homes. I want them to sell their houses. And if they want something from me, if they're having a bad day, I'm their friend because I care. And all these things. So what do they want on the other side of the deal? And I'm going to make them feel that because I care and I want to make the deal go better. And typically, if they feel those things, they're going to tell their client, they're going to feel away, and then it's easier. And then back and forth. So, and a lot of times it is just about communication. And outside of real estate, if a client, or if a client that calls you is by himself and he's not losing his home. There's a client that is a senior couple that has been living in their home for 40 years. They know that pretty soon they're going to have to move into another home. And when I go there, they're like, well, where do you want to start? I'm like, I really want to start listening to your story. I don't want to start looking at your home right now. Tell me about you. Tell me about your story. You've been here for 40 years. Tell me about your story, about this home. And I just want to cry thinking about it. It's like, they happen to come there and look at their home and tell them what the amount of money is. And it's just like, no, I want to learn about you and tell me about your story. Did you have your kids here? Like, what did they do? Did they play in this backyard? Tell me about these trees. Did you plant them? Oh my goodness gracious. I mean, wow. I bet, tell me about this. And then when they're comfortable, they're going to tour me around the house. And guess what? At the end of the day, I've seen their house, and when they're ready to sell, maybe they're going to call me. I think they might, because I've earned a little piece of some trust, because they wanted someone to hear them, not just be there to tear apart their home and make them go into a facility. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that fills my heart, because guess what? I'm a person too, and I want to feel something. I want to feel like I have a value other than putting a for sale sign in their yard.
Yeah.
And,
I love that. You're such a good human being, Stefanie.
well, I wouldn't say, you know what? And I look at, like, I'm not just, girl, I've done things. There's a past that got me here. I've always had a big heart, but
yeah.
I'm perfect.
Right. Well, and, You're so humble too. So, but what I am getting from this, a couple things. It's funny about the whole giving people what they want and you'll get what you want.
Yeah.
And you said that about Brad.
Yeah.
One of the books and classes I read this summer talked about that a lot. And, it's kind of a superpower. It really is. If in any relationship, in the husband-wife relationship, in your kids' relationship, but then with your clients as well, if you can pay attention and identify what it is that person needs and how you can make that person happier, how you can make that person feel special, significant, the basic human needs, that they will reciprocate. And the deeper relationship, the deeper this reciprocation. I'm not saying you're going to get every listing appointment you go on because you're kind, but it definitely is. It's a different way of doing business, and I think it's so fitting for real estate moms, right? Mega moms. That's how we want to get business. So we don't want to go in with a script and say, well, what are you going to do if your house doesn't sell? And lead with the scripts of scarcity and fear. That's not who we are or how we teach people to do business. I think that, I hope that everyone listening to this podcast will truly hear us when we say, see how you can make an impact in their lives. Now, that does not mean that you're going to undercut yourself, undervalue yourself, overextend yourself, and not charge. I do see that happen a lot to our moms because they have such huge hearts, and, they go into a little old lady's house at 75 who's a hoarder and has 20 cats, and they're like, cleaning her house for her and running her to the pharmacy, and I've seen all of that. And I'm not saying you shouldn't be helpful, but what I am saying is you're running a business, and this business has a purpose. Being a real estate agent, having your real estate license, it has a purpose, and that is to provide for your family. And so if you're doing that, if you're giving away services for free and you're not being compensated, you're truly robbing from your family, because you don't want them to get the leftovers. And I know you're not doing that, but I'm thinking of a couple. Yeah.
So I've heard the girls, in our coaching groups and that kind of thing, say the things. And I remember, early on, this is my 18th year, but I remember early on doing quite a few things. I'd never worked for free. I've always charged. But I remember doing quite a few things. And I remember having Brad, when he gets off of work, chipping and peeling paint and doing those things. And now my boys I had Jacob over at a house vacuuming yesterday because we've got a client out of town, and there was some pet odor and whatever. And I'm like, and we had a cleaner, the sellers paid for a cleaner, and I'm like, you're going to get over there and do more vacuuming and whatever, because he wasn't doing anything. And I'm like, you're going. So I have to do those things. But so definitely you need to be charging for your service, but you can still have a ton of heart and care.
Yeah. So I think what we're going to do, we're about 23 minutes in. So what I'd like to do is pause here, and we're going to go to our next episode. So we're going to do a part 1 and part 2 of this. And the next one, we're going to be talking about, when you should defend yourself, when should you tell your side of the story, how the truth always comes out in the end, avoiding being a doormat. So we're going to talk about those things, but hopefully this first part gave you a little bit of grace and perspective of how to put yourself in the other person's shoes. And when there is a conflict, don't just jump to the defensiveness. So we're going to go ahead and cut here, but we will see you in the next episode.